I went to jail for 2 years because of my son's affair. The truth destroyed his life. I never thought the worst betrayal of my life would come from the person I loved most in this world. My son. The boy I raised alone after his mother walked out when he was just 3 years old. The child I sacrificed everything for. The young man I went to prison for, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, because this story isn't just about revenge. It's about how blindly loving someone can destroy you, and how the truth, when it finally comes to light, can be more devastating than any punishment a court could ever hand down. My name is David, and for 43 years, I lived what I thought was an honest, simple life. I worked as a senior accountant at a mid-sized pharmaceutical company called Healthbridge Industries. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well, and after 20 years of service, I had built a reputation as the most reliable person in the finance department. I was the guy who stayed late to fix other people's mistakes, the one who never took credit but always delivered results. And then there was my son, Marcus. Marcus was 26 when this all started, fresh out of business school with an MBA he was so proud of. I was proud too. God, I was so proud I could barely contain it. I had framed his diploma and hung it in my living room like it was the Mona Lisa. See, I never finished college myself. I had to drop out when Marcus's mother left because someone had to work double shifts to keep the lights on and food on the table. But Marcus was going to be everything I couldn't be. He was smart, charismatic, ambitious. Everything a father could want. And when he landed a junior marketing position at Healthbridge, the same company where I worked, I felt like my life had come full circle. We could drive to work together, have lunch in the cafeteria. I could introduce him to colleagues I'd known for decades. Thought it was perfect. I had no idea I was. Watching the setup for my own destruction, the affair started. About 4 months after Marcus joined the company, I didn't know about it at first, obviously. Why would I? Marcus had always been private about his relationships, and I respected that. He was an adult, after all. But then I started noticing small changes. He'd take phone calls and walk away quickly. He'd smile at his screen during work hours, typing messages with an intensity that seemed too personal for professional communication. I figured he'd met someone. Maybe someone from another department. Young love, I thought. Good for him. Then one evening, about 6 months into his employment, Marcus came to my apartment looking nervous. Actually nervous. My son, who could charm his way through anything, was fidgeting with his car keys and avoiding eye contact. I need to talk to you about something, he said, his voice tight. I turned off the television, my heart already starting to race with that parental instinct that something was wrong. What's going on, Marcus? Are you okay? He sat down heavily on my couch. The same couch I'd bought at a thrift store 15 years ago, because new furniture seemed wasteful when Marcus needed college savings. I'm in trouble, Dad. Big trouble. The next words out of his mouth changed everything. I've been seeing someone at work. It's complicated. She's married. I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to stay calm. Okay, I said slowly. That's not ideal, but you're both adults. These things happen. You'll end it. Move on. Learn from it. Marcus shook his head, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. It's not that simple, Dad. She's the CEO's wife. Time seemed to stop. The CEO of Healthbridge Industries was a man named Richard Castellano, a ruthless businessman known for his volatile temper and his vindictive nature. People whispered about employees who crossed him and mysteriously found themselves unhirable anywhere in the industry. And Marcus had been sleeping with his wife. Marcus, what the hell were you thinking? I stood up, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Do you have any idea what this could mean for your career? For your future? I know. Marcus stood too, running his hands through his hair in frustration. I tried to end it, Dad. I swear I did. But she's obsessed. She's threatening to tell Richard that I forced myself on her if I don't keep seeing her. The room started spinning. What? She says she'll claim I sexually harassed her, that I pursued her relentlessly, that I threatened her job security through you. Marcus's voice cracked. Dad, she's crazy. I'm scared. If she does this, I'm finished. We're both finished. I should have seen it then. Looking back now with the clarity that only complete destruction can bring, I should have seen the manipulation. The way he positioned himself as the victim, the way he made her sound unhinged while conveniently leaving out how the affair actually started, who pursued whom, how long it had really been going on, but he was my son, my only child. The boy I'd raised alone, protected alone, sacrificed everything for alone. We'll figure this out, I heard myself say. Just give me time to think. 2 weeks later, everything exploded. Richard Castellano found out about the affair. I still don't know how. Maybe she confessed. Maybe he saw a text message. Maybe someone from the office gossip mill let it slip. But he found out, and his rage was biblical. I was working late one evening, finishing up the quarterly financial reports, when 2 security guards appeared at my cubicle with a police officer. David Morrison, the officer said, his face professionally blank. Yes, you're under arrest for embezzlement and financial fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The words blurred together as they handcuffed me right there in the office, in front of colleagues I'd worked with for 2 decades. I heard gasps, whispers, saw phones being raised to record the humiliation. My mind couldn't process what was happening. Embezzlement? Fraud? I had never stolen a penny in my life. The case against me was terrifyingly thorough. Prosecutors presented evidence of financial transfers I had supposedly authorized, moving company funds into offshore accounts. They had emails with my digital signature approving fraudulent vendor payments. They had testimony from the IT department showing access logs from my computer during times. When these transactions occurred, it was airtight. It was also completely fabricated. My public defender, an overworked woman named Sarah Chen who barely had time to learn my name, told me the truth bluntly during our second meeting. Mr. Morrison, they have you cold. The evidence is overwhelming. If you take this to trial, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. But if you plead guilty, accept a plea deal, they'll recommend 2 years with possibility of early parole for good behavior. But I didn't do it. I kept saying, like a broken record, I didn't do any of this. Someone set me up. Do you have any evidence of that? She asked, not unkindly, but with the wariness of someone who'd heard this claim 1,000 times. I didn't. Of course I didn't. Marcus visited me in county jail while I was awaiting trial. He looked devastated, his eyes red from crying. Dad, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this is happening. It's all my fault. If I hadn't gotten involved with that woman, if I hadn't dragged you into my mess, it isn't your fault. Son, I told him through the plexiglass partition, my hand pressed against the barrier like I could somehow touch him, comfort him. This is Richard Castellano's revenge. He's punishing me to hurt you because he can't touch you directly without admitting his wife had an affair. Marcus nodded miserably. I've been trying to find evidence to clear you, Dad. I've been digging through everything. But they covered their tracks so well, I don't know what to do. You take care of yourself, I said firmly. You keep your head down, do your job, and build your life. That's what I want. That's all I've ever wanted. I took the plea deal. 2 years in medium security prison. I had no choice, really. The alternative was risking decades behind bars, and I wasn't a young man anymore. 2 years seemed survivable. I could do 2 years, get out, rebuild somehow. Marcus promised to visit regularly. He promised to keep fighting to clear my name. He promised to wait for me, to have a life ready for me when I got out. Prison is exactly as terrible as you imagine, and worse in ways you can't conceive until you're living it. I was a middle-aged accountant surrounded by violent offenders, gang members, people who had done things I couldn't comprehend. I kept my head down, did my time, worked in the prison library because my accounting skills were worthless there. Marcus visited exactly 3 times in 2 years. The first visit was a month after my incarceration. He looked uncomfortable in the visiting room, his designer suit out of place among the other visitors in their worn jeans and tired faces. He told me he was doing well at work, that he'd been promoted to senior marketing coordinator. That he was still trying to find evidence to exonerate me? The second visit was 6 months later. He seemed distracted, kept checking his phone. He told me work was demanding, that he was traveling a lot for the company, that the investigation into my case was difficult because Healthbridge had locked down all their financial records. The third and final visit was just before my 1-year mark. This time Marcus looked different, more polished, more successful. He was wearing an expensive watch I'd never seen before. He told me he'd been promoted again to director of marketing. He was dating someone new, someone from outside the company. Things were looking up for him. "That's great, son," I said, feeling a strange hollowness in my chest. "I'm proud of you." He left after 30 minutes. Said he had a flight to catch. I didn't hear from him again until 3 days before my release, when I finally walked out of prison. 2 years older and about 1,000 years more broken I expected. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought Marcus would be there to pick me up. Maybe I thought there'd be some acknowledgement of what I'd sacrificed for him instead. There was a taxi voucher in my property envelope and a note with an address for a halfway house. I called Marcus from a payphone outside the prison. He answered on the 5th ring, sounding rushed. "Dad, hey, I'm actually in a meeting right now. Can I call you back?" "I'm out, Marcus. I'm out of prison." Pause. Right. That's great, Dad. Listen, I'm swamped this week, but let's get together soon, okay? I'll text you." He didn't text. I spent the first week in the halfway house trying to rebuild a life from ashes. My old apartment was long gone, rented to someone else. My savings had been drained by legal fees. My reputation was destroyed. Nobody wanted to hire a convicted embezzler, even if he'd served his time. I finally reached Marcus again a week later. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in a part of town I didn't recognize, far from anywhere we used to go. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. He was wearing a 3-piece suit that probably costs more than my entire wardrobe used to. His hair was styled perfectly. He wore confidence like cologne. "Dad," he said, and hugged me briefly, perfunctorily. "You look good." I looked terrible, and we both knew it. Prison had aged me. I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. My hair had gone completely gray. "Marcus, I need your help," I said, once we sat down. "I need a place to stay while I get back on my feet. Just temporarily. And maybe you could talk to someone at Healthbridge. Explain that I'm looking for any kind of work. Even janitorial, Dad." "Stop." Marcus held up a hand, and something in his expression made my blood run cold. "Look, I've been thinking about this a lot. About our situation, and I think it's best if we maintain some distance right now." Distance. "I'm in a really good place in my life right now. I'm up for VP of marketing. I'm engaged to an amazing woman, Carolyn. Her father is on the board of directors at Healthbridge. This is everything I've worked for, everything we've worked for. And having a convicted felon as my immediate family, it complicates things." The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. "I'm a convicted felon because of you, Marcus. Because I took the fall for Richard Castellano's revenge against you?" Marcus's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "No, Dad. You're a convicted felon because you got caught embezzling from the company. That's what the courts decided. That's what the evidence showed. You know I didn't do it." He leaned back, and the stranger wearing my son's face looked at me with something close to contempt. "Maybe you did do it, Dad. Maybe you got greedy after all those years of being overlooked and underpaid. Maybe you saw an opportunity and you took it. It wouldn't be the first time someone in your position made that choice." I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Marcus stood up, straightening his expensive suit. "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. But I have to think about my future, my career, my relationship with Caroline. I can't have this association dragging me down. I hope you understand." "I went to prison for you," I whispered. "No," Marcus said, his voice cold and final. "You went to prison for yourself, for your own mistakes. I'm sorry you can't accept that, but that's not my problem anymore." He left a $20 bill on the table for the coffee and walked out of my life. I sat there for 3 hours, staring at that $20 bill, trying to understand how I'd gotten here. Trying to understand how the boy I'd raised, the son I'd sacrificed everything for, had become this. That's when I decided to find the truth. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but because I needed to know. I needed to understand what had actually happened, who had actually destroyed my life. It took me 6 months of living in the halfway house, working night shifts at a gas station, saving every penny. 6 months of learning skills I never thought I'd need. How to navigate public records. How to use internet cafes to dig through digital archives. How to talk to people who might have information. I started with the obvious question, who actually embezzled the money? The transactions that convicted me had moved $470,000 from Healthbridge Industries into a series of offshore accounts over an 8-month period. The accounts had been emptied within days of my arrest. The money vanished into the cryptocurrency ether. It's impossible to trace, but someone had created those accounts. Someone had learned how to use my credentials. Someone had planned this meticulously. I found my first real clue in a Reddit thread of all places. Someone from Healthbridge's IT department, paused anonymously, had mentioned a weird security audit about 3 years ago where they'd been asked to clone employee credentials for penetration testing exercise, a poster thought. It was suspicious that the audit had been requested by someone in marketing, not at security, but had been approved by upper management. Someone in marketing. My hands trembled as I typed a response, asking for more details. The poster never responded, probably had deleted their account. But it was enough. It was a thread to pull. I started hanging around the coffee shops near Healthbridge during lunch hours, listening to employees gossip. I learned that Marcus had indeed risen rapidly through the company. Suspiciously rapidly. From junior marketing coordinator to VP of marketing in just over 2 years. I learned that his engagement to Caroline Castellano was the talk of the office. Caroline Castellano, Richard Castellano's daughter, not his wife. His daughter, the affair Marcus had confessed to me, wasn't with Richard Castellano's wife at all, I felt. Reality shifting beneath my feet as the pieces started clicking together with horrible clarity. I found my next clue through a former Healthbridge employee I met at a job fair, a woman named Jennifer who'd worked in HR. Over coffee, after I explained I was trying to clear my name, she told me something interesting. I always thought it was weird how fast Marcus Morrison got promoted, she said. Usually there's a process, reviews, approval chains. But his promotions just happened. And always, right after, he'd spent time with Caroline Castellano. She'd been working in the marketing department as a consultant, even though she didn't need to work at all. They were dating. I asked, my throat dry. Dating, sleeping together, whatever you want to call it. Everyone knew, but nobody talked about it because, well, she's Richard Castellano's daughter. You don't gossip about the boss's daughter if you like your job. When did they start seeing each other? Jennifer thought about it. Maybe 3-4 months after Marcus started at the company? I remember because there was this company retreat in the Bahamas, and they disappeared together for a whole afternoon. Came back looking very satisfied. For months after Marcus joined the company, exactly when he told me the affair started, but he'd told me it was Richard's wife. He'd told me she was threatening him, that she was unstable, that she was going to destroy both our lives with false accusations. He'd lied, but why? I spent the next 2 months piecing together the timeline. And what emerged was a picture so ugly, so calculated, that I found myself hoping I was wrong. Hoping there was some other explanation. Marcus had started dating Caroline Castellano 4 months into his employment. By all accounts, she was deeply in love with him, naive and sheltered despite her wealth. He was the exciting, ambitious young man who paid attention to her, who wasn't just interested in her father's money and influence, but Marcus had bigger plans than just dating the boss's daughter. Through a contact I'd made, a former security guard at Healthbridge who'd been laid off, I learned about an incident that had occurred about 8 months into Marcus's employment. The security guard, a man named Tom, remembered it because it was unusual. There was this big blow-up in Richard Castellano's office, Tom told me. screaming, things being thrown. Caroline came running out crying. The next day, there was suddenly this investigation into the finance department. I remember thinking it was weird timing. Do you know what the fight was about? Tom shook his head. Above my pay grade. But I heard rumors. Some people said Caroline had accused someone of harassing her. Some said she'd been caught in a compromising position and was trying to deflect blame. The investigation into the finance department. That was when the evidence against me had been discovered. I finally found the missing piece when I did something desperate and probably illegal. I contacted Richard Castellano's ex-wife, Marcus's alleged affair partner. Through Facebook, her name was Linda. She'd divorced Richard 3 years ago and moved to Seattle. When I sent her a message asking about Marcus Morrison, she video called me immediately. "Who the hell is Marcus Morrison?" were her first words. I explained who I was, what had happened, what Marcus had claimed. Linda's face went through several expressions before landing on pure rage. "I've never even met anyone named Marcus Morrison. I haven't been anywhere near Healthbridge Industries since the divorce. I got my settlement, and I got out. So it was all a lie. The affair with Richard's wife, the threats, the fear, all of it was a fabrication." But why would Marcus lie to me about something like that? The answer, when it finally came, was so simple and so monstrous that I had to sit down. Marcus had needed me to believe he was in danger. He needed me to believe that Richard Castellano was out for revenge, that any actions taken against our family were because of the affair. Because if I believed that, I wouldn't question the embezzlement charges. I wouldn't investigate. I wouldn't fight. I would take the plea deal quietly, believing I was being punished as collateral, damage in a powerful man's vendetta. But the truth was so much worse. I found the final confirmation in the public property records. 3 months after my conviction, Marcus had purchased a luxury condo in downtown San Diego. Cash purchase. $680,000. More than the amount I'd been convicted of stealing. But close enough when you factored in cryptocurrency, conversion fees and offshore account costs. My son had embezzled the money. My son had framed me. My son had used my credentials, my access, my digital signature that he'd learned to forge from watching me work. And then he'd used the fake affair story to manipulate me into accepting a plea deal, into going quietly to prison, into not fighting or investigating. And while I rotted in prison, he'd used the stolen money to fund his rapid rise through the company, to wine and dine Caroline Castellano, to position himself for marriage into one of the wealthiest families in the state. I'd sacrificed everything for him, and he'd sacrificed me without a second thought. The rage that filled me then was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to destroy him the way he'd destroyed me. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain and betrayal that was tearing me apart. But I'm not a violent man. I never have been. So instead, I planned something worse. I planned the truth. I spent the next month gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Bank records, property records, testimony from former employees, screenshots of social media posts that established timelines, everything. I compiled it into a comprehensive document that laid out exactly what Marcus had done and how he'd done it. Then I made copies. Lots of copies. I sent the evidence to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I sent it to the SEC. I sent it to the Healthbridge Industries Board of Directors. I sent it to Richard Castellano personally. I sent it to local investigative journalists at 3 different newspapers. I sent it to Caroline Castellano at her personal email address that I'd found through some digging, and then I waited. The first domino fell 3 days later. The FBI announced they were opening an investigation into financial irregularities at Healthbridge Industries. The story hit the local news that evening. The second domino was Richard Castellano. According to the news reports, he went ballistic when he learned that his daughter's fiancé was not only a thief, but had manipulated everyone around him, including his own father. Richard had many faults, but he genuinely believed I was guilty. Learning the truth, learning that he'd been played by a junior marketing employee, wounded his ego in a way nothing else could. Marcus was fired within 24 hours. His assets were frozen. The FBI raided his condo, seizing evidence. But those weren't the dominoes I cared most about. The one I waited for was Caroline. She came to see me at the gas station where I worked. 3 weeks after I'd sent out the evidence, I was taking out the trash, and a luxury sedan pulled up and she stepped out. She was beautiful in the way wealthy young women often are, polished and poised. But her eyes were red from crying, and her hands shook as she approached me. "You're David Morrison," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am. I read everything you sent me. Every word. Every document." Her voice cracked. "Is it true?" "All of it." "Yes." She started crying then, really crying. The kind of crying that comes from the soul. "He told me you were a criminal. He told me you'd always resented his success, that you'd stolen from the company out of jealousy. He told me you were trying to ruin his life with false accusations because you couldn't accept responsibility for what you'd done." "I know," I said quietly. "Been lying to me our entire relationship. About you. About the money. About everything." She wiped at her tears angrily. "My father wants to kill him. Literally kill him. I had to talk him out of doing something that would land him in prison." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. She was a victim in this too, in her own way. "Why did he do it?" Caroline asked, her voice small. "Why did he destroy you? You're his father. You raised him alone. You sacrificed everything for him." That was the question, wasn't it? The one that haunted me every night. Why? I'd spent hours thinking about it, analyzing it, trying to understand the psychology of what Marcus had done. And I'd come to a conclusion that was somehow both simple and incomprehensible. "Because he could," I said finally. "Because he saw an opportunity to get what he wanted, and I was the most convenient sacrifice. Because somewhere along the way, I failed to teach him that other people matter, that the people who love you aren't just tools to be used." Caroline looked at me with something like pity. "What are you going to do now?" "Now, the FBI is building their case. My lawyer, my new lawyer, a real one who believes me, says I have grounds for exoneration. The evidence is overwhelming that I was framed. It'll take time, but my conviction will be overturned. And then I rebuild my life. Find a job where someone will take a chance on me. Maybe move somewhere new, somewhere without these memories." I looked at her steadily. "Marcus will face justice. Real justice, not the manufactured kind he arranged for me. The FBI tells me he's looking at 10 to 15 years for embezzlement, fraud, identity theft, and about a dozen other charges. More than I served for crimes I didn't commit." Caroline nodded slowly. "Good. He deserves it." She paused, then reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you. Don't argue. Just take it." I opened it. Inside was a check for $100,000. "I can't accept this," I said automatically. "You can and you will," Caroline said firmly. "My father is many things, but he hates injustice. When he learned what Marcus did, how he'd manipulated everyone, used me to climb the social ladder, destroyed an innocent man, he wanted to make it right. This is from him. Consider it restitution for what you lost." I stared at the check. This piece of paper that represented more money than I'd ever had at once in my life. "There's something else," Caroline added. "My father is also planning to offer you a position at Healthbridge once your conviction is overturned. Director of Internal Audit. It's a senior position. Good salary, benefits, retirement. He wants someone with integrity watching over the finances. Someone who's proven they can't be corrupted." I almost laughed. Almost. "Tell your father I appreciate the offer, but I don't think I can work at Healthbridge again. Too many memories." Caroline nodded, understanding. "He figured you might say that? So he's prepared to offer you the same position at one of his other companies. He owns a chain of medical supply distributors. Completely different industry, different building, different people. Fresh start. No, a fresh start. When was the last time I'd had one of those?" "I'll think about it," I said. Caroline left after that, driving away in her luxury sedan, back to her world of wealth and privilege. But she'd been changed by this, I could see it. Marcus had broken something in her too, some innocence she'd never get back. The trial happened 6 months later. Marcus fought the charges initially, tried to claim he was being framed, just like he'd framed me. But the evidence was too strong, too comprehensive. His own digital fingerprints were all over the fake accounts, the cryptocurrency transfers, the forged authorizations. In the end, he took a plea deal. 12 years in federal prison. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't want to see him. Didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me watching his downfall. But I heard about it from my lawyer. Apparently Marcus made a statement before sentencing, claiming he'd been driven to it by financial pressure, by the stress of trying to live up to his father's expectations, by the burden of being raised by a single parent who'd sacrificed so much, even at the end. He was trying to make himself the victim. The judge didn't buy it. 12 years. And he'd serve at least 10 before parole eligibility. My conviction was formally overturned. At 8 months after I'd sent out the evidence, it made the news, a small story about a man wrongfully convicted, now exonerated. I gave one brief interview to a local paper, keeping it simple, focused on the facts. I didn't mention that the person who framed me was my own son. That detail was already public record. But I didn't want to feed the sensationalism. I took the job Richard Castellano offered me at his medical supply company. The pay was more than I'd ever made as an accountant at Healthbridge. I rented a small house in a quiet neighborhood, bought furniture that was actually new, started rebuilding, but the damage Marcus had done. That couldn't be undone. I had nightmares. Still do. Dreams where I'm back in that visiting room, telling Marcus I'm proud of him, while he smiles and plans my destruction. Dreams where I'm in the courtroom, accepting the plea deal, sealing my fate while my son watches with cold calculation. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Reeves, who specializes in trauma and family betrayal. She helped me understand that what Marcus did wasn't a reflection of me, of my parenting, of my worth as a person or a father. Some people are born with something missing, she told me during one session. Empathy, conscience, the ability to see others as fully human rather than objects to be used. You could have been the perfect father, done everything right, and it wouldn't have changed what he was capable of. I'm not sure I believe that entirely. I still wonder what I missed, what signs were there that I was too blind or too loving to see. But it helps sometimes. To think that maybe this wasn't entirely my failure. I haven't spoken to Marcus since that day in the coffee shop. He tried to write to me from prison, a long letter that arrived about a year into his sentence. I could see it sitting in my mailbox, his handwriting on the envelope. My name and address written in the same hand I'd watched develop from childhood, scrawls to adult precision. I threw it away without opening it. There's nothing he could say that I want to hear. No apology that would mean anything. No explanation that would justify what he did. He made his choices. He destroyed me to elevate himself. He spent 2 years letting me rot in prison for his crimes while he built a life on the foundation of my suffering. And now he gets to live with those choices. The truth destroyed his life, yes. But not because I wanted revenge. Not because I was cruel or vindictive. The truth destroyed his life because that's what truth does to houses built on lies. It crumbles them, inevitably, eventually. I'm 50 now. I've been free and exonerated for almost 3 years. I've rebuilt a decent life. I have a job I'm good at, respect from colleagues who know my story and admire that I survived it. A small but genuine group of friends. I even started dating someone. A woman named Patricia who works in medical records at one of the hospitals we supply. She knows everything about what happened to me. I told her on our 3rd date, figuring she deserved to know what kind of damaged goods she was considering. She listened to the whole story, then took my hand and said, "That's not damage. That's survival. There's a difference. Life goes on. It has to, but I'd be lying if I said I was the same person I was before all this. Something in me died in that prison cell, in those long nights wondering how my son could do this to me. In those visits where I looked into his eyes and saw a stranger, the capacity for unconditional love, maybe. The ability to fully trust. The belief that family is forever, that blood bonds mean something sacred and unbreakable. Marcus taught me that none of that is true. That the people who can hurt us most deeply are the ones we love most completely. That sacrifice isn't always rewarded or even acknowledged. That sometimes the person you die for would step over your body without a second glance. It meant getting what they want. These are bitter lessons. Hard lessons. The kind that age you in ways that have nothing to do with years. But I survived them. And in surviving, I found a kind of strength I didn't know I had. The strength to face the truth, no matter how painful. The strength to fight for justice, even when it seemed impossible. The strength to rebuild after being completely destroyed. I think about Marcus sometimes. Sitting in his cell, living the life he crafted for me. I wonder if he has regrets. Real ones, not the calculated kind meant to shorten his sentence. I wonder if he thinks about me, about what we could have had if he'd been capable of genuine love. Probably not. People like Marcus don't have those kinds of thoughts. They're too busy being the victims of their own stories. His parole hearing is in 7 years. I've already received notification that I can submit a victim impact statement if I choose. I haven't decided yet whether I will. Part of me wants to. Wants to stand up and tell the parole board exactly what he took from me, what he destroyed, what he cost me in years and dignity and peace of mind. But another part of me thinks silence might be more powerful. That the best revenge, the most complete victory, is moving on so thoroughly that he becomes irrelevant to my story rather than the center of it. I'm still deciding. What I do know is this. I survived the worst betrayal imaginable. I went to prison for my son's crimes. Lost everything. Was abandoned by the one person I thought would always stand by me, and I still found a way back. That's not nothing. That's not weakness. That's the kind of resilience that can't be taught or faked. It's earned through suffering. Through choosing to keep going even when every part of you wants to give up. And if I could do that, if I could survive Marcus, then I can survive anything. The truth destroyed his life. But it saved mine, not because it gave me revenge, though there's a part of me that found satisfaction in his downfall. But because it gave me something more valuable than revenge, it gave me freedom. Freedom from the lie of who I thought he was. Freedom from the guilt of somehow failing him as a father. Freedom from the prison of believing I deserved what happened to me. The truth set me free. And that freedom, hard-won and blood-bought as it was, is worth more than any revenge could ever be.